They ordered a strike on Iran's key nuclear facilities, an Operation Midnight Hammer. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Those beautiful B-2 bombers performed magnificently.
Central Iran, 64 kilometers northeast of Isfahan, 3:30 in the morning. 96 U.S. Army Rangers from the 75th Ranger Regiment were lying on the ridge above Iran's enrichment bunker. Inside the fence, 384 Iranian forces guarded 420 kilograms of enriched uranium locked inside 24 armored cylinders. The Rangers had 90 minutes to seize the core of the site, destroy the machinery, and get out before outside units sealed the valley. The bunker was built to survive airstrikes. 2 centrifuge halls sat under 18 meters of rock and concrete. A vault under the command block held the uranium cylinders, hard drives, and sealed records. 4 watchtowers covered the approaches. 6 Zu-23-2 guns ringed the yard. 2 blast doors guarded the north tunnel. 3 diesel generators kept the halls running if the grid failed. Iranian forces believed the bunker could not be taken by a raid before dawn. The plan split the force. Alpha had 28 Rangers at the North Tunnel with C4 shaped charges and 1 Carl Gustaf M3. Bravo had 24 Rangers to cut the East Power Yard, destroy the generators, and block movement of the uranium. Charlie had 22 Rangers to enter through the West Service Shaft with det cord, thermite, and Mk-18 CQB-R carbines for the control rooms. Delta had 22 Rangers on the South Ridge with Mk-11 Mod 0 rifles, M24OB machine guns, 1 Javelin missile, 1 Mk-19 grenade launcher, and 1 M2 Browning to stop vehicles and cover extraction. At 3:36, the assault began. Delta dropped the first 2 tower guards with Mk-11 Mod 0 shots. Bravo moved through the east drainage ditch. Alpha ran low across the north slope. Charlie cut the west fence, fixed det cord to the service hatch and blew it open. For 8 seconds, Iranian forces thought the blast came from the generator yard. Then Bravo destroyed the transformer with C4. Alpha fired a Carl Gustaf M3 round into the north gate bunker. Charlie slid into the shaft. Iranian forces reacted in separate pockets. Guards near the barracks grabbed AK-74 rifles and ran toward the gate. Delta cut them down with an M24OB burst. A PKM machine gun answered from the vehicle shed. Delta fired the Javelin missile and turned the shed into fire and scrap. By 3:38, Alpha had crossed the ditch and reached the blast wall while Charlie was inside the west shaft. Alpha hit a steel gate backed by 2 sandbag pits. 1 Ranger fired an AT-4 into the left pit. Another pushed grenades into the right slit. Iranian forces inside stopped firing. A breacher fixed a shaped charge on the hinge. The gate blew inward. Alpha entered the tunnel under sparks and dust. The first bend held 3 Iranian forces behind a forklift. Alpha answered with M4A1, SOP Mod 2 fire, and 1 short burst from a Mk-48 Mod 0. The defenders dropped. Alpha kept moving. At 3:40, Charlie reached a cage door in the west shaft. The latch was locked. A Ranger taped a linear charge across the frame and blew it. Charlie climbed into a corridor beside Hall 2. 2 Iranian technicians ran for an alarm panel. Charlie dropped both with Mk-18 CQB-R fire. A PKM opened from a side room and hit pipes over the team. Charlie crawled left, threw a flash grenade, rushed the room, and killed the crew. Thermite went onto the first server rack. The team pushed toward the command block stairwell. The Bravo was now inside the East Power Yard. 3 Rangers held the wall with M249 SAW fire while the rest placed charges. Iranian forces tried to swing a pickup truck with a DSHK into position. A Ranger fired through the windshield with an M4A1SO PMOD2. The truck rolled into a barrier and stopped. Bravo planted C4 on the 3 backup generators, the switch cabinets, and the fuel pumps. At 3:42, the charges went off together. The generators folded in on themselves. At 3:44, Delta saw the first reaction convoy leave the South Barracks. It had 2 armored pickup trucks and 1 flatbed carrying 18 Iranian forces. Delta waited until the convoy reached the narrow lane between 2 berms. Then the Mk-19 grenade launcher opened. The first burst hit the lead truck. The second walked across the flatbed. An M2 Browning on the rear truck fired uphill. Delta answered with the M240B, the Ridge M2, and 2 Mk11 Mod 0 rifles. A Ranger fired the second Carl Gustaf M3 round. The rear truck rolled on its side and blocked the lane. Inside the north tunnel, Alpha reached the first interior security door at 3:46. It had a sliding lock bar and 2 firing ports. Iranian forces fired through both ports with AK-74 rifles. Alpha hugged the wall. 4 defenders were waiting inside. A shaped charge went on the lock bar. The blast punched the door inward. Alpha entered hard. 2 Rangers went left, 2 went right. 1 defender fell beside the release wheel. The others died behind stacked crates. Beyond that room was the access hall to Hall 1 and the vault branch. Alpha split and kept moving. At 3:48, Charlie reached the command block stairwell and met the hardest fight yet. 12 Iranian forces had stacked desks and steel cabinets across the landing. A PKM fired from the center gap. An RPG-7 hit the wall and filled the stairs with dust. 1 Ranger fired a Mk-48 Mod 0 burst into the barricade seams. Another sent a flash grenade over the rail. A breacher slapped C4 onto the desk stack and fell back. The blast tore the barricade apart. Charlie rushed through and killed the defenders. Bravo left 6 Rangers to hold the east yard and sent 18 toward the support buildings. A Ranger with a Mk-11 Mod 0 dropped 2 shooters on a roof. Near the fuel tanks, Bravo ran into a sandbagged DSHK that pinned the lead file behind a forklift frame. 1 Ranger moved right through a shallow trench, got within 22 meters, and fired an AT-4 into the sandbags. The blast flipped the gun stand and cleared the lane. Bravo reached the radio room wall and set a linear charge across the steel door. At 3:50, Alpha entered Hall 1. The hall was 70 meters long and full of spinning centrifuge rows under red lamps. 6 Iranian forces fired from between the machines. Alpha answered with careful M4A1SO PMOD-2 bursts. A Ranger on the left used a Mk-18C QBR to clear a raised catwalk. Another fixed thermite to the first control cabinet. 2 more Rangers placed C4 on the central pipe junctions. The team was there to kill the hall. At 3:54, Charlie breached the command room. The first door took shotgun rounds and a kick. The second needed a shaped charge. Inside were 8 Iranian officers, 4 technicians, hard drives, wall maps, and control panels tied to the vault and cameras. 2 officers raised pistols. Charlie shot them. 1 Ranger smashed radio racks with a steel bar. Another placed thermite on the server stacks. A third loaded drive trays into hard cases for extraction. In less than 2 minutes, the room that ran the bunker was blind and burning. At 3:56, Bravo blew the radio room door and entered the rear comms center. 3 Iranian forces were trying to move sealed document cases through a side exit. Bravo cut them down. 2 more fired from behind switchboards. M249 SAW fire tore through the panels and silenced the room. Bravo grabbed the document cases, ripped hard phones off the wall, and fixed thermite onto the switch racks. 6 Iranian forces rushed from the motor pool. The East Yard hold team dropped 4 with M4A1 fire. A grenade killed the last 2. 26 minutes into the operation, Delta spotted a second convoy coming from the highway spur outside the complex. It carried 27 Iranian forces in 3 trucks. Delta let the first truck pass the earlier wreck, then hit the second with the Mk-19. The convoy stopped in a tight line. The Javelin team had already shifted to a second firing point. The missile struck the third truck under the cab. Metal and fire filled the road. Mk-11 Mod 0 rounds broke the driver's side glass. None of the convoy reached the inner yard. At 3:58, Alpha reached the vault corridor. It was only 2 meters wide, with 3 heavy doors and 2 ceiling cameras still running on battery power. Alpha shot out the cameras and pushed forward. Iranian forces behind the first door fired through a narrow slot. Alpha answered with a shotgun breach and M4A1 bursts at waist height. The first guard point fell in seconds. The second door opened into a dogleg corner with a PKM on a tripod. The first burst wounded 1 Ranger in the shoulder and 1 in the thigh. A grenade rolled under the tripod and blew the gun over. Medics sealed the wounds, and Alpha kept moving. At 4 o'clock, Charlie left 6 Rangers to hold the command block and sent 16 to the upper catwalk over Hall 2. Iranian forces were trying to close blast shutters over the idle machines. Charlie reached the controls first. A Ranger shot the operator. Another jammed the panel with a crowbar. Charlie moved along the catwalk and cut down 4 defenders behind crates with Mk-18 CQBR fire. 2 Rangers climbed to the floor, placed thermite on the drive motors, and ran det cord across the row ends. At 4:02, the Bravo linked with Alpha at the cross hall between Hall 1 and the Vault branch. This was the first time 2 U.S. Army Ranger elements were together underground. Iranian forces launched a counterattack from the reserve stairwell with 21 men, 1 PKM, and 1 RPG-7. The rocket hit the wall near the junction and wounded another Ranger with fragments. Alpha and Bravo answered together. Mk-48 Mod 0 fire ripped the center of the rush apart. M249 SAW fire held the left side. M4A1 SOPMOD 2 carbines cleared the right. The counterattack broke in less than 40 seconds. At 4:04, the vault door came into view. It was circular, driven by an electric motor and backed by a manual wheel. The power was gone, but the deadbolt was still set from inside. Bravo covered the hall while Alpha worked the lock. A shaped charge blew off part of the hinge housing, but the vault held. Alpha changed method at once. 2 Rangers cut at the exposed lock rod while another packed C4 into the gap. The second blast snapped the rod. The door opened just enough. 4 Iranian forces inside fired through the gap. Alpha threw a flash grenade, forced the door wide, and took the room. At 4:06, the U.S. Army Rangers had the main objective. Inside the vault stood the 24 armored cylinders, 8 sealed data cases, and 2 carts already loaded for movement. 3 Iranian nuclear engineers and 4 guards were captured alive. 1 guard reached for a pistol and was shot. Alpha tagged the cylinders, checked serial numbers, and confirmed the count. Bravo moved the data cases into carry slings. Thermite went onto the carts and lock consoles. C4 went onto the rack base, so nothing left behind could be used again. At 4:08, Charlie blew Hall 2. Date cord flashed across the machine rows and cut through 640 centrifuges in one chain. Thermite burned through motors, bearings, and control heads. Seconds later, Alpha triggered the Hall 1 charges. Pipe junctions burst. Control cabinets blew apart. Metal fragments tore through the spinning rows. A pressure wave rolled down the hall and killed the last emergency lights. Iranian forces, still hiding in side rooms, tried to run for the exits. Delta cut down 11 of them as they broke into the yard. At 4:12, outside reinforcements from a base 19 kilometers away finally reached the South Road. They found burning trucks, blocked lanes, and Delta still firing from the ridge. The ZU-23-2 pits were silent. The towers were dark. The east yard generators were gone. No one outside had a clear picture of what still worked inside, but that delay gave the U.S. Army Rangers the last window they needed. Alpha fired the final C4 charges in the vault. Bravo pulled the wounded onto soft litters. Charlie left the west shaft with the hard drives and records. Delta stayed in place until every underground element was moving. By the 45-minute mark, the bunker was no longer a functioning site, but the Rangers still had to get out. At 4:18, Delta fired the last Mk-19 rounds into the road wrecks, broke down the launcher, and fell back in bounds. Alpha came out of the north tunnel under smoke. Bravo crossed the east yard with 2 litter teams and the captured records. Charlie reached the west ridge first and set a rear charge on the shaft mouth. At 4:24, the charge blew and sealed the upper access point with broken concrete. 1 hour after the assault began, the Rangers were moving west through the dry cuts beyond the ridge. Iranian forces tried one last chase with 31 men and 2 trucks from the north road. Delta stopped the lead truck with M2 Browning fire. Bravo hit the second with an AT-4 and left it burning in the ditch. The chase ended there. At 4:42, the first helicopters reached the pickup zone 6 kilometers from the bunker. By 5 o'clock in the morning, the last U.S. Army Ranger was airborne, and the target area behind them was still burning. The U.S. Army Rangers lost 3 killed and 9 wounded. Iranian forces lost 121 killed, 94 wounded, and 52 captured. The Rangers destroyed 1,760 centrifuge units, 24 uranium transport racks, 3 backup generators, 2 fuel systems, 1 command center, 1 radio center, 6 trucks, 4 watchtowers, 6 ZU-23-2 gun pits, and 3 internal vault systems. Nausea total damage to the bunker complex was estimated at $418 million. Iran believed the bunker could hide under rock, steel, distance, and layered guns until its work was safe. What actually happened was that 96 U.S. Army Rangers broke into the site, seized its core, wrecked its machinery, and left before the larger force outside could stop them. Iranian forces had depth, numbers, and fortified ground. What they did not have was 96 U.S. Army Rangers willing to go underground, take the heart of the site, and erase it before dawn.